Hey y'all, it's Mickey, and I am here today to tell you my top 10 reads of 2015. In 2015, I read 60 books. That is 8 more books than I originally set my goal for. My Goodreads goal, I set it for 52 books. So I'm really happy about that I was able to exceed my goals. And I actually read a lot of books that I really liked. So these 10 books are my favorite books out of the 60. My number 10 read from 2015 was Game of Thrones by George R. Martin. This was my favorite brain candy read from last year. It was just a whole lot of fun. And I read it at the right time when I was just like really stressed out and just really needed a break. And it was a really great break from a lot of the things that I was thinking about. It has a really fast paced storyline and interesting characters. And I was intrigued by it. So really liked Game of Thrones. My number 9 read from last year was City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. I tried to read a lot of fantasy last year because I was trying to step a little bit out of my comfort zone and try out some genre fiction. I'm still not sure that fantasy is the genre for me, but I did really like City of Stairs. City of Stairs is about this country called the Bulkalov, I believe it is, who used to be in control of the Sapuri, and they were in control of they basically were colonizers. They basically had colonized the Sapuri, and the reason why they were able to do this was because they had these godlike figures on their side. But then the Sapuri figured out a way to kill off one of their god figures, and they basically lost the war. And then the Sapuri came in and colonized them. And so I really like this book a lot because it just touched on some really serious issues, things like colonization and a religion. And it had a really strong female character. And there was a lot of action also involved in it too. But I really, really kind of liked the history of the world that he created and the sort of like political intrigue that was happening in it. It was really creative and a lot different from a lot of the other fantasy I read. My number 8 read from last year was Boy Snowbird by Helen Oyemi. Now, I agree with most people that the ending of Boy Snowbird is really bad and kind of problematic. It addresses transgender identity in a way that is definitely can be misconstrued as extremely unfavorable. And the ending also just didn't make sense to me. I had absolutely no idea why the piece ended that way. But I loved everything about this book before the ending, like every single thing about it. I loved Helen Oyemi's writing style. I loved the characters that she created. I was just like crazy about this book until the end. So much so that I'm willing to put it on my list of favorites despite the ending, because I just really enjoyed it that much. If you don't know what Boy Snowbird is about, it's about this woman named Boy who marries this man Arturo after she runs away from her abusive home. And Arturo has a daughter named Snow who looks kind of like the Snow White fairy tale character. And she and Arturo have a baby together. And when their baby is born, their baby bird, she is clearly of African American descent. It's set in the 1950s, I think it is. And Arturo and Boy both appear to be white. So it's clear that there are some family secrets that Arturo is keeping, and it just has a lot of conversations about race and identity and being seen, and I just really liked it. So that was my number 8 read. My number 7 read was The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. Oh, I love this book so much. It was such a wild ride. It has probably one of my favorite narrators of all time in it. Junior, who is playing the role of the Watcher, which is from some comic that I can't remember because I'm not that much of a comic book geek, but Oscar is in the piece. And if you are a comic person or a fantasy person or sci-fi, you will love it. It has this chock full of those type of references. It's about Oscar, who is a Dominican, second generation Dominican immigrant who, and he's a little bit overweight and very dorky, really into, things that people would consider nerdy, and it's basically kind of like his quest to find love. And at the same time, we also get his background, the background of the previous generations that came before him, his mom and his grandparents, who were all inadvertently wrapped up into the tumultuous history of the Dominican Republic, which you learn a whole lot about through the book. And I loved the characters. I loved just listening to them and learning about the families. And it was a really, really great book, and I definitely recommend it. My number 6 book, sorry, I'm looking at my list, is Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Yep, I drank the Coates water. I fell into the hype. I read it and I really, really, really liked it. I particularly liked the book, the sections of the book that focused on his learning at a HBCU. I can't remember specifically which one he went to. Oh my gosh, I have such a horrible memory. But he was just talking about his college experience going to a historically Black university. And first off, it made me regret not doing so also a little bit. And also he talked a little bit about how his dabbling in Black nationalism and some of the things that he learned from that, and some of the things that he also found problematic about it. And he just had this way of saying a lot of things that I feel and I think just so elegantly and beautifully. And I just really, really enjoyed the book. It's basically a letter written. Ta-Nehisi Coates is an African-American writer. He writes for The Atlantic. And it's a letter he wrote to his son about what it's like for him right now to being a Black man, and what advice he would give his son to traverse this world. And it was just really, really beautiful, and I really liked it. My number 5 read was Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi. This is the true crime novel about the Manson murders, and I flew through this book. This book was like glued to my hands for like 3 or 4 days straight, which is a big feat because this book is huge. It's like 1,000+ pages, and I had the big library hardcover version of it, so I was carrying that mug around with me everywhere. I couldn't stop reading it. I had nightmares. I was literally reading it like all day and into the night, and like there were days couldn't even sleep because it was just like, man, these type of people, these were real people who existed and they did these things. I read this book. I was prompted to read this book because I had watched the last season of Mad Men last year, and I remember everybody kept everybody thought that the Manson murders were going to be involved in the plot of Mad Men, particularly because some of the characters were living in California, and Mad Men was set in the 60s, around the time that the murders happened. It didn't really happen, but there were all these like references to it that other people noticed that I didn't, because I realized I had like very cursory knowledge, like not that much about the Manson murders. So I was really interested, and I read it. And what I really liked about the book was that it did a really good job of reminding us that these were people. The people who were killed were people, actual human beings who lost their lives, and the people who committed these murders were also human beings. And it kind of got rid of the sensationalism for me a lot, and so I really appreciated that book for that. I definitely recommend it if you're a crime fiction fan. And then my number 4 choice is, I'm cheating here, it's totally cheating, but I'll own up to it, is the Pittsburgh play cycle by August Wilson. These are all 10 plays that August Wilson wrote in his Pittsburgh play cycle, which is where he wrote one play for every decade of the 20th century about the Black experience. I read all of these plays during the summer for a project that my theater company was doing, and I was just awed by this man as a writer, especially reading each of them back to back, one after the other. I read them in chronological order, and just sort of tracking where he felt Black people were in, say, 1901 to the 2000s. And it was just, it's just amazing. I loved it so much. If you've never read August Wilson before, you need to do so. He's a playwright, and he's just amazing. I would start with either Fences or The Piano Lesson, though my absolute favorites are Seven Guitars and King Hedley II. But that would be my number 4 choice. I just really, really, really enjoyed that. My number 3 choice for this is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I've already talked a whole lot on my channel about how much I love that book, wrote a blog post about it. Just a heartbreaking story about a man kind of ashamed of his sexuality, and he has this relationship with this other man in France who is a lot poorer than he is, and it just broaches so many topics of like shame and sexuality and poverty and how that affects those things. And there's a lot of talk about the way gender roles kind of work. It was just really, really beautiful, and it was just such a nice story. Oh my God, not a nice story, but just like beautifully written and heartbreaking. And I'm reading a James Baldwin book right now, and I'm just like in awe of this man. It was my first James Baldwin book, and I really, really loved it. So that was my number 3 choice. My number 2 choice for last year was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I really, oh my god, I love this book so much. It is about the character Elena and her friend Lila, and they grow up together in this poor Italian neighborhood, and they are enemies, they're competitors almost as much as they are friends, in that they kind of push each other. They're always kind of sort of trying to outdo each other a lot, and it's just, so they kind of have this kind of complicated relationship. But the difference between the two is that Elena is allowed the chance to further her education, while Lila is not. And this piece does a good job of just looking at the ways that poverty and patriarchy can have like a huge effect on the accomplishments of other people. And it does a really, really good job of illustrating like the effects of toxic masculinity. The men in this community, they're told that they're supposed to, provide and protect their families, but then they're not allowed to do so because they don't have, they're not provided with the jobs and the means to do these things. And so they have to find other ways to prove that they are a man, but and the best way that they can come up with is by brutalizing and controlling the only things that are weaker than them, which are their women and their children. And just seeing the effects, like she does a good job of just outlining the effects of it. Like it almost shows up as a form of madness in some of the characters. It is so beautiful, and the ending scene of this piece is just incredible. I definitely have Ferrante fever. I'm going to be reading the rest of the series this year. It was just a really, really great read. I so recommend it. It was definitely, I gave it 5 stars. It was one of my favorite books of last year. And then my number 1 read for the year was The Sellout by Paul Beatty. Now, truthfully, I feel a little bit nervous recommending this book to other people, because it's the type of book where if you don't get it, you will be very, very offended by it. It's a satirical novel about race, where there's this black man who is growing up in this agrarian society. He's like a farmer in the ghetto, though. Like, it's really weird. Like, he rides on, he's a farmer in the ghetto. His father is this scientist or psychologist more so, who was performing these sort of sociological experiments on him concerning race. And then his father is killed by the police. And he has to decide, I guess he kind of has to decide if he's going to take up his father's mantle. And he kind of does. He kind of tries to, because his father's goal was to try and, improve the condition of the black race. And he kind of tries to do that in his little town, but he does it by reinstituting segregation into his community. And it's just, the book is just amazing. It is laugh out loud funny. Like, I was cracking up sometimes. I read it a lot of times in public, and I was just like snorting on the bus and stuff. It was ridiculous. But it's also really uncomfortable. There's a lot of things you may find yourself laughing at, that you feel uncomfortable about laughing at. And it just brings up points about the way that race functions in America that just, I don't know. It just prompts me to want to change things and really like reevaluate the way that I look at it, and get other people to reevaluate the way that I look at it. It shows how the concept of race in a lot of ways is just absurd, really. It's ridiculous and absurd, but it's also so freaking important, and it affects so many people and so many things. Like, it literally can kill people, the way that race functions in America. And to see something that insane and absurd have that effect on people, it's just, this book does such a great job of addressing that. And I would recommend it, especially if you're a fan of, say, Dave Chappelle or Paul Mooney. If you're a fan of either of those comedians, you'll definitely enjoy it. I just have a hard time. I just worry about recommending it to people, because I know that there's some people, I just feel like if you don't get it, there's one or two things that'll happen. You'll either be really offended by it, or you'll think it's really, really funny, and you'll laugh at it and not get the point of it. You won't actually learn anything from it. It's kind of like what Dave Chappelle was talking about. Part of the reason why he ended up leaving the Chappelle show, where he realized that people were laughing at the jokes and not getting the message and the meaning behind them. That they were laughing at black people and laughing at these sort of depictions of them and not understanding that and taking them as truths instead of looking at them as the sort of ridiculous fucking stereotypes that they were. And I worry that some people might read this book and miss the point. But if you, it's still great. I mean, I still try it. You should try it out. You should try it. It's so great. I can't stop thinking about it. I read it like a month ago almost, and I can't stop thinking about it, and I can't stop talking about it. I'm like obsessed with it. So I definitely would recommend that. So those are my top 10 books from last year. Kind of sped through them. I'm really nervous. I forgot how to do this, you guys. This whole, this is what I get for like taking such long ass breaks from doing BookTube. I like don't know what I'm doing whenever I come back to do it. I'm like, what am I doing? So bear with me. I'm trying to get back into a regular schedule of doing this. I have no goals for 2016, reading goals really. I have a 52 book goal like on Goodreads still, and I have 18 books from my shelf that I do want to read this year, because last year I pretty much read books. All my books came from the library. Like hardly any of the books that I read last year came off my shelf. So I really need to fix that, because I have a lot of unread books. And so I'm going to link a list down below of the 18 books that I want to read this year. And if any of those books are, if you're interested in those and you want to buddy read them, please let me know. I feel like if I have someone to hold me accountable to getting them read and someone to talk to about them, I might get to them more likely. But other than that, I have like nothing else to say about 2015. It was a great year. I'm hoping that 2016 is going to be a better year, particularly for this channel. And thanks for watching.